Hello, my name is Nina King and I'm a part of the Bridgewater College Teacher Education Program. You're about to see an analysis of a lesson I designed and taught to an Art 1 class at Turner Ashby High School. This lesson included a demonstration of hand building from clay slab as well as an introduction into the newest art project they will be working on, which corresponds with SOL Art 1-6. According to SOL Art 1-6, students will use a variety of mediums including 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional materials. So my CT and I decided I would teach them slab building techniques using clay, a 3-dimensional medium. The goal of my lesson was to include differentiation. Out of my 21 students, 3 have IEPs and 2 have a 504 plan. There was one student on a 504 plan with severe general anxiety disorder, and I told her before the lesson began that if she ever felt overwhelmed from the sounds of the clay being slammed on the table, that she was allowed to move her seat or take a small break from the classroom. The goal of using differentiation is to modify instruction to fit the needs of the learners in the classroom. By differentiating by content, process, product, and/or environment, I wanted to give all of my students an equal opportunity to succeed and practice their art skills. Throughout the video, I will describe the types of differentiation that I used, as well as their strengths and weaknesses. My first differentiation was used during the teaching process and modeling portion of the lesson.
And I've also passed out to at a table the directions so you guys can read through how to create the slab while I'm also demonstrating, if that's helpful.
As you can see, while I was demonstrating to the students how to create and hand-build slab, I also provided them with a written direction sheet. This differentiation is processed by learner profile. I decided to appeal to both auditory and visual learners because I know I have students who benefit from both. As a result, I wanted to ensure that all of my students had an equal opportunity to learn the material in the way that was best suited for them. It is important to appeal to all types of learners. A strength to this differentiation was that I was able to provide my students with a page of notes that allowed them to read and see up close each step that I was demonstrating. And further, they were able to have those directions in front of them while they were completing their independent practice. A weakness to this differentiation was that I did not include something for kinesthetic learners while I was modeling, but after my lesson was presented, students were able to hand build. My second differentiation was used during the independent practice portion of the lesson.
So what you can do is, you guys can make anything you want, but as long as you're using slab, it doesn't have to be, it can be a birdhouse, it could be a mask, it could be this little beehive. It doesn't have to be functional. This is more decorative than it might be functional. I mean, granted, my goal is to use it as like a little candle holder, but I utilized negative and positive space to kind of create a form that is interesting to look at rather than something like this that while the bottom is open, it could be sealed to be a birdhouse. You guys will also have the option to work in glaze or in acrylic. So both of these.
You will notice that I give the students the opportunity to create a sculpture of their choosing, so long as the main hand building technique is slab. By doing so, I allow my students to create something that they will value rather than requiring them to create something that they do not have any interest in. This differentiation is product by interest. My students are taking their own interests into account to create a sculpture that they are able to take pride in and personalize it to themselves. As you can see in the images, one of my students loves soccer, so he is making himself a desk game that is a soccer net. Another student is very big into drawing and colored pencils, so he made a jar for his pencil shavings with a removable top. I gave my students multiple examples of sculptures that can be created from slab to help my students possibly find inspiration in something they could create, whether functional or non-functional. A strength to this differentiation is that I show my students that art is about self-expression, and that cannot be put into true practice unless the student is in more control of the end result. As a result, my students won't feel as restricted in the works they cannot create, but they will feel inspired in the works that they can create. A weakness to this differentiation is that some of my students may not truly know what they wish to create, and they could feel stuck. Some students as well may become too ambitious and become overwhelmed by the sculpture they choose. My third differentiation was continued in the independent practice portion of the lesson. My CT and I decided that while we are giving students the opportunity to create a sculpture of their choosing, We should also put in place a standard based on readiness. This differentiation is product by readiness.
If you're feeling super comfortable and you are so excited to start working with clay, make a sculpture that's larger in form if you're very comfortable doing that. But if you're also very new to clay and you might be a little timid, make something a little on the smaller scale. You guys have that option. Ms. Wetzel and I are leaving this up to you guys. We want to see the best thing that you can make with clay. And if it's something smaller but it looks so great, that's absolutely fabulous.
This instruction is differentiated in a way that allows my students who are not as familiar or possibly easily overwhelmed by the clay to create smaller scale projects, while students more familiar with clay can create larger projects. One student was feeling excited, but did not know how good he would be with clay, so he made a larger project but kept his design on the more simplistic side with a shield. Another student had worked with clay before and wanted to make something more decorative, so she decided to make a rose to challenge herself. A strength to this differentiation is that it allows all students to create a product to the best of their ability, all working on a scale that suits each individual student best. A weakness to this differentiation is that there is potential for the instruction to be too broad and too ambitious. As well, it could allow some students to slack and not create a work to the fullest potential. Based on this lesson, I was able to see firsthand how differentiation creates an opportunity for all students to equally participate in a lesson. By providing my students with more student choice based on interest, my students were excited to create something unique to each of them. This allows the students to thrive in the classroom, and it tailors instruction to fit the needs of every student in my class. As a result, every student feels included in the lesson and is able to be more engaged.